little larger. Well, all right, who's my door guy? Say, Tom, get the door for me.
I'm not Tom, I'm Jerry.
All right.
Tom and Jerry's on it.
You can't hear me. My ears clogged too, so here we are. All right, folks. Good morning. Is it a good morning?
Yes, it is.
It is? All right. We are in 1 Peter chapter 3, talking about you wives. I knew I'd get a look. 1 Peter chapter 3, talked about the wives.
Somebody needs to talk about us.
Got that right. If there were ever a day to do it, today's the day, right? I got no comments. All right, moving on. So we talked about the idea of the wives behaving in such a way that they're without a word, verse 1, without a word by the way their wives live, they observe your pure and reverent lives. The husbands may be won over. This is a weird way to put it, but that's what it says. We would imagine that Peter is married or had been married because he has a mother-in-law, as we learn from the Gospels, right? And there's no punishment more fitting for a person than to have a mother-in-law but not be married, right? So you have him being having a mother-in-law in the Gospel, so when he was a younger man. We also see him later in this book and the next one making reference of the idea of him also being an elder or a shepherd. And that would fall under the category of what Paul lays out to be requirements, presuppositions about a person who is an elder, and then husband and one wife is the one that we always go to talk about. Because what does that mean? Well, it means simply, how many wives do you have? Oh, great, you're qualified, right? So there you go. That was the issue in the Gentile church anyway. Okay, so you have the wives being talked about living in such a way that they may win over their husbands if they're not converts already. And then you go on to verse 3. Now this is in 1 Peter. It's also in 1 Timothy as well, so don't let this one scare you too much. Don't let your beauty consist of outward things like elaborate hairstyles and wearing gold jewelry or fine clothes, but rather what is inside the heart, the imperishable quality of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. Okay, we'll pause right there. We got some more additions in verse 5 and following, but just in verse 4, what do you see here? Or 3 and 4. What do you see?
Character counts.
Okay, character counts. Character is more important than outward appearance, right?
You're supposed to appear as a person a lot better than the way you dress.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Look at you, they think of the kind of person you are instead of the clothes you have on.
Right, absolutely. I think the main kind of position that some take is, therefore, you should not be wearing elaborate hairstyles or wearing gold jewelry or fine clothing. Now, that's not the thing that I think that Peter's trying to emphasize here. I think he's trying to emphasize the idea of what we said already, that the character is more important than the outward appearance, right? And so I would not draw a line because of what's said at the beginning of the clause in verse 3, that you can't wear gold, you can't get a nice haircut, whatever, right? That's not the important thing. The important thing is what's on the inside of the heart.
You take out the line, follows it to the comma,
Mm-hmm.
which is just an example of what they're talking about.
Yep.
It says, don't let your beauty consist of outward things, but rather what is inside the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have the qualifier there. But don't let your beauty consist of the outward things, but, verse 4, rather what's inside the heart, kind of helps us kind of see what Peter's talking about here. And then you have the addition of the elaborate hairstyles, wearing gold jewelry, fine clothing. Keeping in mind here that he is writing to primarily Gentile Christians with these letters, right, in modern-day Turkey. And so he is talking to people that grew up, and when they would go to worship, if you want to use that terminology, the idea of elaborate hairstyles, wearing gold and fine clothing was kind of a prerequisite. You wear your best to go to the temple to go render your service to whatever deity you're going to go worship that day. That would be a norm for them. And Peter's just trying to address the idea, hey, we don't have to focus on that. You focus on the idea of what's on the inside of your heart, because God knows that, right? So, easy? Good to move on? Well, Tom, what you got?
Well, what you wear is a reflection of what's in your heart in lots of cases. I mean, if you want to push the limits, okay, I can't make rules for you. So. And when I read this verse, I think of Mennonite women in long dresses, and I like that kind of thing. But I'm not going to make a rule if you're going to wear that stuff.
Yeah, any man making a rule about what a woman should wear, unless it's talking about modesty, you're in dangerous territory anyway, right? Yeah.
I actually had somebody fuss. I went to a small country church.
Were you wearing pants?
No.
Okay.
But my mother got fussed at by someone there because she French braided my hair.
Oh, man. Haven't you read 1 Peter chapter 3? You can't be doing that in the church.
She actually got fussed.
Yeah, well, you know, I've got fuss for a whole lot more.
It's easy to say, we don't want to go overboard.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember growing up, the example of the woman that wore her fur coat to church and only to church to show off. But there's also the psychiatric health side. One of the first things I learned in psych nursing was people dress the way they feel. And if you see somebody who's usually clean and neat and they're not clean and neat anymore, there's something wrong in their mind. You see this in dementia patients now, but if you go visit the psych wards, on admission, you will see people who are very inappropriately dressed. They don't comb their hair, they don't brush their teeth, they're wearing clothes that are dirty and wrinkled because there's something wrong with the way they think. Or they're dressing like a Las Vegas showgirl when they're going to work in an office. And there's something, so we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but it's a hint.
Okay, here's me reeling us back in. Y'all ready? Verse 5. For, because in the past, holy women who put their hope in God also adorn themselves in this way. In what way?
With obedience and respect.
With an imperishable quality of a gentle and quiet spirit. Right? That's the idea. And then here is the qualifier from the verse 1, submitting to their own husbands. And then here is, oh man, verse 6. Just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord or Master. All right. Well, I've never heard that in my life, I'll tell you what. Nor do I deserve such. But here's the last sentence, and we'll be done with this. But you have become her children, Sarah's children, when you do what is good and do not fear any intimidation. So bringing it kind of full circle here, hey, if you want to be a child of Father Abraham, if you will, and Mother Sarah, then you need to also behave in such a way that they behaved, which would be, if you're Gentile, not Jewish, a huge compliment to you, that you are now included into the inclusive family of God going all the way back to Abraham, right?
When we were growing up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I've heard of such.
To be more dressed up, but it was a sign of respect for where you're going. Because, I mean, it's not that the clothes were that much better than what we wore every day,
Mm-hmm.
but,
Women wear dresses and men wear pants.
Well,
that's just was.
I will add the caveat here from the outside perspective that that is primarily cultural, not scriptural. Would you agree with that statement? Because cultures shift and change in what you think is appropriate to go to church in. The idea of wearing something special for going to church would have been a foreign concept to the first century church. Because this is a whole brand new thing for them, right? Yeah, you've got your tunic, you've got your clothes. That's what you got, right? Primarily, if you're just a working class person, you've got the clothes that you go to work in, the clothes that you're not going to work in. That's probably what you can afford. And also keep in mind here, we've got a 2/3 slave population in the Roman Empire, Roman occupied world. You only got a third that can actually choose what they wear because that's what they can do. 2/3 are given clothing to wear if they're slaves in the Roman Empire. Okay, pulling it back to verse 6 here. Again, so we have this example being followed of the model of character, not culture, of Sarah obeying Abraham. Okay, speak now, forever hold your peace. Ladies?
It's a commandment given to women,
Yes.
not men to submit their hearts, but women to submit themselves, because we're working on our heart to give it like God wants it to be in an humble state.
Yeah. If you are trying to force your wife to submit, that's not how that works. Right? Well, only one more verse of danger, and then we're moving forward. Ready? Husbands. Here we go. Now, I would reference 1 Corinthians and Ephesians 5, because that's a bit larger than the text that we have in front of us, guys, in 1 Peter chapter 3, but here it is. Husbands, in the same way, and there's a multitude of similarities, live with your wives in an understanding way, says the CSB, as with a weaker partner, showing them honor as co-heirs of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. A couple of things in here stand out to me as I tiptoe my way through the eggshells in front of me, okay? Peter seems to think he has the audacity to say that women, their wives, are weaker than the husbands. What do you think about that? What's that?
It's a true statement.
Okay, in what way are they weaker?
Physically.
They were created to be the helpmates.
Okay, all right. I heard a good answer. What else?
I'm not sure that's what Peter is saying.
No, I think
Wait.
pretty sure I read it.
As with a weaker partner. That doesn't mean she's weaker. You just treat her like she's needs more help.
Oh,
Women are very capable.
I agree with
Not
you.
strong,
They're not strong.
okay?
Uh-huh.
Get things done.
Okay.
Yeah, we get it, guy.
All right, okay. All right. I knew it was going to be a problem. Here we go. A couple of suggestions of what he means here. Is she let me say what he's not saying, the best of my ability. Is he saying that a female, a woman, is spiritually weaker than a male counterpart? That's not been my experience working in local churches at all. The backbone of the local church, I used to have a sermon called, was the women, right? Because the guys, I'll make this comment and then move forward. Y'all ready? Here's the comment I'm going to make. When do we have an explosion of attendance for Sunday morning worship? It's Christmas, it's Easter, what's the third one? Mother's Day. Today happens to be Father's Day. Is there going to be an explosion of attendance on Sunday morning today? It's possible. I've never experienced it. In 20 years of ministry in the local congregation, I've never seen Father's Day being a booming event when it comes to Sunday morning worship. So I do not look at verse 7 and agree with Peter if he's trying to imply that women are weaker in a spiritual way than men. That's not been my experience. So if it doesn't mean that, then it may mean the idea of physically weaker, understanding that he is the one who primarily would go out to the fields and bring home the income. She'd be the one who's in charge of all domestic responsibilities in the first century Roman world, is the context here.
One thing is a woman for another.
Yeah, that's right. So as the helpmeet or the helper that was created to help the man Adam begin with his job in Eden, that makes sense to me, not the spiritual ones that people want to throw in here. Okay, husbands, if you don't do that, it seems like your prayer life has the ability to be hindered by not living with your wife in such a way. There is a lack of unity, cohesion, two becoming one in the marriage bond there if there's not that equal level of submission and respect that's seen here in the text. Okay, Peter, moving on. Finally, he says, in chapter 3 of 5 chapters, he says finally. You'll catch it? There's 5 chapters. Okay, he's in chapter 3. He says finally and goes on for 2 more chapters. My man. 3 points and a finally at your third of 5 points. Okay, finally, all of you be like-minded. Okay, so the Greek here is very, very close to the English. It's having the same psyche, literally is how we would render it from the Greek. And sympathetic, love one another, and be compassionate and humble, not paying back evil for evil or insult for insult, but, on the contrary, giving a blessing, since you were called for this so that you may inherit a blessing. Okay? So where did he learn this whole idea of not paying back evil for evil, insult for insult, but instead blessing the person that curses you? You'd hope Jesus, right? This is Sermon on the Mount material 101 right here, right? Okay, in 2 Peter, we'll get there in a little while, like probably 2 weeks. Then we're going to look at the idea of how he begins that letter, because that letter begins in a totally different way than 1 Peter does. 1 Peter begins with to whom he's writing, and then kind of they're going through persecution, and here's why they shouldn't be surprised, right? That's 1 Peter, essentially the intro. 2 Peter's like, hey, let me explain to you what I know about this Jesus guy that you all claim to follow. He's God, and here's how I know it, right? This is how he begins his second letter. Because they were questioning whether or not Jesus was just another angelic messenger, or he was, what was he? And Peter says, let me tell you what he was. Okay, so again, the chorus here of what the Christian life looks like is completely congruent. It's the same as what Paul has been talking about in all his letters, right? You're living the same kind of lifestyle according to James, according to Jude, according to Peter, according to Paul. They're all in agreement with each other. The places where you get different characteristics are not writings of the first century. When you get to 2nd, 3rd, 4th century writings, so-called missing books of the Bible, which they're not, that's where you get some weird stuff in there. This is all congruent. It all sounds the same, right? For good reason. Okay, questions, comments about that conclusion in the middle of chapter 3?
I would say this is another one of those, it's almost like tangentially doctrinal to the Christian faith is it's real easy to understand, but very hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy, it's theoretically simple, but in application, way complex.
But it's calling you to be very different than your typical person would be.
Yeah, for sure.
And how they would react to others.
Mm-hmm.
It's calling you to really pray Christful, help you be like him.
Yeah, yeah. The more we can be like Jesus, that's kind of the goal, right? So being like-minded, being unified based on what we know about Christ, which is, I would say, dare easier for us because we have the book that talks about his life. We have 4 of them, right? So we have a ready access to what it was like to be around Jesus. Compared to the first century, you're hearing orally what it was like from across the world, right? The Roman world. You might have the ability of someone in the church having the gift where they could speak by inspiration, but how that worked in practice apparently was not great, because in 1 Corinthians 12, 13, 14, you got a whole bunch of chaos going on, and no one's learning anything. They're all just being puffed up with how great and important they are. So you can miss the point. So, being like-minded, being sympathetic, putting yourself in the sandals of somebody else, right? Yeah, okay. Loving one another. That's the word agape. That's the kind of love that wants the best for the other person. It's not the affectionate love. It's not the sexual love. It's not any of that. It's the kind of love that God has for us. Okay. Be compassionate and humble, just across the board. Being full of compassion is a characteristic of Jesus, right? He saw the crowds. They were hungry. He had compassion on them. They were like sheep without a shepherd. That's Jesus. And then being humble, he humbled himself, though being God, to the point of death for us. Okay. Okay, here's a quotation from the Old Testament. For, or because, the one who wants to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do what is good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. Because the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do what is evil. So he's quoting this to allow the people who are primarily Gentile to see, hey, this kind of lifestyle has been talked about and been recommended, if you will, for a long time. And you are just picking up the thread and running with it with your life as well. Okay, thoughts?
Are they quoting the Septuagint when they quote?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, we don't have anyone in the New Testament, as far as I know, that I can prove, quotes the Hebrew. We all quote the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible, which is in Greek. Okay, verse 13. Who then will harm you if you are devoted to what is good? Well, I mean, we are Roman after all, so I mean, you know, besides Caesar and the Jews who won't convert and the Gentiles who are upset because we're destroying their idolatry, I mean, in comparison, you got God on your side. So, like, you know, that's the game here, is like, okay, so only man is pursuing you. Yeah, for sure, can't. But the Lord can destroy your soul too, which is a curious way to put it. Verse 14, but even if you should suffer for righteousness, you're blessed, right? Remember, the only time that Peter or anyone talks about Jesus being an example to follow is in what condition? Suffering, right? You're to be like Jesus. Suffer like he suffered. That's a good high calling, which is confusing if you're signing up to follow Jesus in the first century. For us, we're like, yeah, we can understand that, but it's not really part of our vernacular nowadays in this part of the world. Here's a quotation, do not fear them or be intimidated, but in your hearts regard Christ the Lord as holy, ready at any time to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. This is apologetics, right? Apologia is the Greek word here for defense. It's the idea of giving an answer to someone who says, why do you think you have hope in the life after this one? Well, let me tell you why. Verse 16, yet do this with gentleness and reverence, keeping a clear conscience, so that when you are accused, those who disparage your good conduct in Christ will be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good if that good should be God's will, than for doing evil. What does this sound like? Sound familiar?
Beatitudes.
Beatitudes. I'm thinking primarily Book of James, right? The idea of suffering, and then when they look at your good conduct and they see your good works, they're trying to discourage you and bring accusations, but they can't find any bad thing that you've done. They did it for Jesus, they did it for Paul, but they were trying to find groups of these Christians in these locations, in this culture, this day and age, trying to find negative, evil things, and they can't find any. So there's no real cause to bring them before the courts. So that's very, very similar. We're going to find also in the end of 1 Peter and the beginning of 2 Peter that a lot of things that James and Jude have written, which we've read already, Peter will quote. So he had a copy of James and Jude on hand. It's word for word in the Greek. So either the same Holy Spirit's using the same words through three different authors, or get a copy of it lying around. He's encouraging people to read it because it's the same teaching. Okay, questions about that? Okay. Because, we're building, Christ also suffered for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring you to God. Okay, so if you're suffering unjustly, then you have good company, right? Because your Savior did the same thing. He was put to death in the flesh. Why was it important that it's emphasized in the flesh, in his physical body? Okay, so he's a human like us, so yeah.
Sacrifice.
Yep, he's a sacrifice, he's the Lamb of God, right? One more big reason. All right, so you have in the first century, we'll get in 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, the Gnostics were starting to really pick up pace. They were the ones who believed that there is a huge distinction or division between flesh and spirit. And I would say, yeah, there is a big difference, but the way they would parse it out would be like this. Flesh, bad, spirit, good, right? So either, when it comes to how you deal with a physical form, either you physically mutilate your fleshly body to become more spiritual, or it doesn't really matter what you do in your physical body because it's unholy anyway, so do whatever you want. So that's the Gnostic doctrine of dealing with the flesh. And they would say, in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, even the 4th century, the Gnostics would say that Jesus could not have a physical, human, fleshly body like ours because the fleshly body is unholy. So how can God have that? He can't. So it looked like a fleshly body, but wasn't. So Peter, by saying he was put to death in the flesh, he's using that line that has been distorted and will continue to be distorted and making it very, very clear. So he suffered in the flesh. He was made alive by the Spirit, in which he also went and made proclamation to the spirits in prison who were in the past disobedient when God patiently waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared. What?
Lines that the cultists like to pull out and use to do whatever move they want to do with.
Well, it's a funny line.
Yeah.
Okay, does it sound familiar to our Bible students this morning? You know, the spirits that were in prison?
Is that the ones that talk about the disobedient angels that he threw in the prison?
Yep, it's the same one. Yeah, so Jude, remember the spirits of the angels who were left in eternal darkness under chain? Where'd you read that? 1st Enoch. And here you've got Peter quoting the same exact book. Wow. Wild, right? So what you would do And so you look at this and you're like, why is he quoting first Enoch here when he's talking about Jesus? What's the connection? He's saying here there's a lot of moral lessons to be learned from the books that we grew up as Jews reading about in synagogue, and that's the whole point here. We've covered this in detail for Jude. The idea he's saying that under the days of Noah, when those spirits that were in prison and chains and darkness in Hades, if you will, the Hadean realm, Jesus went down there and gave them an opportunity to hear the gospel and believe it. So, continuing that line, in it, the ark, a few, that is, 8 people, were saved through water. So we're talking about the Noah's flood here back in Genesis, right? Baptism, which corresponds to this, there's a connection between the water of the flood and the water baptism that we've all undergone, now saves you. It's not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a good conscience towards God. It saves you through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God with angels, authorities, and powers subject to him. All right. Does anyone not understand that text?
Well, shouldn't Peter know better than to quote the book of Enoch?
Well, yeah, he should know better, and he did know better. Did it anyway.
The question is, who doesn't understand it?
What's confusing here? What's confusing?
Well, I mean,
What do you not understand?
I was just trying to see if my understanding from before was the angels that fell, I don't know if explicitly said they have a chance of redemption
Mm-hmm.
because they knew God and they decided to choice him. But here it's saying they have a choice. So
Yeah.
it's like, which is it?
Well, I think the emphasis is not on the idea of him going into the Hadean realm and preaching to the spirits that are in prison that heard the preaching of Noah. I think the emphasis here is the idea that Jesus in the flesh suffered, made alive by the Spirit, and just like the ark saved the souls that were on it, when you're in Christ, you're also saved. Yeah, that's the main thing here, right?
Bringing up the body and dirt kind of connected to the Gnostics' idea about flesh and matter.
Yeah, for sure. Like if it's not connected to what the Gnostics are teaching, then why does he bring it up? Yeah, so you'll have the same exact thing in 1 John, because he was fighting that doctrine as well. We'll learn about a bunch of weird stuff towards the end of 2 Peter, and the only explanation I've got for it is he is combating against what the Gnostics are teaching is true about the gospel, and it's not. And so he's correcting it by going into that area. So this is what's going on here as well. Yeah, if it's physical, it can't be holy. So either you punish it or you just do whatever you want to do. It's fine. It's their teaching. Okay, baptism, verse 21. I mean, I don't know. Do we need to cover how essential baptism is? Like we're the Church of Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like this is one of the ones. 1 Peter 3:2-1 is the one you go to talk about baptism being essential for salvation. Was it essential for people to be on the ark to be saved by the flood?
Yes.
Seems like it because no one else lived, right? So if you had to be on the ark to be saved through the water, do you have to be baptized to be saved through the water of baptism? Peter's whole argument here is like, yeah, there's a connection between the idea of the water that destroyed the earth and the water that saves you. Not just the washing of your physical fleshly body, but the idea of you doing it in submission to the commandment of being immersed, to go through the death, burial, resurrection of Christ in a spiritual way. That's Romans chapter 6. Okay. Any more thoughts? Verse 4 begins with the word, therefore, Because all of that's crystal clear. Therefore, since Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same understanding. Which, by the way, there might be a connection here in the language between what we find of the living and understanding with the weaker vessel from the previous chapter to living with understanding that you're following a guy who has suffered in the flesh. Right? There's the idea of you now recognize this to be a reality or a possibility. Because the one who suffers in the flesh is finished with sin. Is that true? Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, walking in the light. Does that mean you're sinlessly perfect? No, no one can get there, or Christ didn't have to come and die in vain. But the idea of we're done with sin. That's not how we live anymore. That's not our intention, not our desire, not our will. We've repented of that, right? You're going to stumble and fall? Yeah. But you are done with it. It's over. In order to live the remaining time in the flesh, no longer for human desires, but God's will. Right? That's the goal. Verse 3. 4, because there has already been enough time spent in doing what the Gentiles choose to do. So he's clarifying here that, hey, we used to live this way as those that don't know God. Carry on an unrestrained behavior, evil desires, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and lawless idolatry. They are surprised that you don't join them in the same flood of wild living, and they slander you. They will give an account to the one who stands ready to judge the living and the dead. And for this reason, the good news was also preached to those who are now dead, so that although they might be judged in the flesh according to human standards, they might live in the spirit according to God's standards. Okay? So this is kind of like being in the world but not of the world, but just for Gentiles as well, not just Jews. Okay? Questions? I think verse 4 is telling, right? They are surprised that you don't join them in the same flood of wild living and they slander you. I mean, this is like...
Yeah, but all that verse, 1 through 6, it's just ripping into the Gnostic ideas.
Yeah. Because if you were of the persuasion of the Gnostics, the flesh doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter what you do with your bodies. Yeah. Orgies, carousing, idolatry, drunkenness, evil desires, unrestrained behavior. That's like the Gnostics' pattern of life for one sect of them. The other sect was like, hey, let's just beat ourselves and flog ourselves and cut ourselves to get this flesh off our minds. So, okay, we're going to pick up here in verse 7 of chapter 4, Lord willing. We might be able to make it through 1 Peter by the end of next week, Lord willing. But if not, not a big deal. We are here to let the text inform us about how we should be thinking and how we should be living. So, thank you for your time and your attention. We'll be dismissed now for about